Hey guys, tonight we begin not with the deafening clash of steel or the thunder of a cavalry charge, but with the quiet, intensely disciplined, and often brutal world of the samurai. We're stepping back in time to a world where a 3-line poem could carry the weight of a death sentence, where social currency was measured in honor, not gold, and where your feudal lord might genuinely ask you to die for a minor infraction and expect you to thank him for the opportunity. It was a world of breathtaking art and breathtaking violence, often created by the same hands. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It makes a huge difference. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see our global community of history nerds assemble. Now, dim the lights. Perhaps pour a cup of green tea for that full sensory immersion. And let's ease into tonight's epic journey together. Live with honor, die with glory, said absolutely everyone in feudal Japan, usually right before making a deeply pragmatic back alley deal to save their own skin. The story is more complicated than the legend. Let's begin. Your childhood doesn't smell like mown grass or baking cakes. It smells like polished cedar wood, camellia oil for your training blade, and the faint incense that burns in the small shrine of your home. Your world is made of rice paper walls that slide open, revealing one room and hiding another, and tatami floors that you learn to walk across silently, like a ghost, before you could speak in complete sentences. You are Kenji, the second son. In your world, this is a declaration of destiny. Your older brother, Kazuo, will inherit the family name, the small plot of land, and most importantly, the responsibility of continuing the lineage. You will inherit the duty of service. Your path is not your own. It is a narrow and rocky one, paved with the expectations of your father and your lord, the daimyo to whom your family has sworn loyalty. Your education begins the moment you can hold a pair of chopsticks. It is divided into 3 battlefronts: the mind, the body, and the spirit. All 3 are equally relentless. The battle of the body begins at dawn, in the courtyard of packed sand. Your instructor is your own father, a man whose expression rarely changes from a mask of grim disappointment. He does not teach you, he forges you. Your first tool is not a katana, but 8 goats, a heavy, clumsy wooden sword that feels alive in her small hands. Training is not about flashy techniques, it's about repetition. Repetition until your muscles burn, until your mind goes blank, until the movement becomes part of you. 1,000 vertical cuts, 1,000 horizontal cuts. You stay in the same posture for so long that your legs shake uncontrollably. One mistake, one loss of focus, and there still goes. His father's sword cracks in his calves or his ribs. Pain is his most constant teacher. The sword is an extension of your soul, he says, his voice hard as stone. Your soul, right now, is weak and careless. The battle of the mind takes place in a quiet room, where you kneel for hours before a small desk. The calligraphy brush is harder to master than the sword. Each character, kanji, must be perfect. The pressure, the angle, the flow of the ink. One drop of ink out of place and the work is ruined. You copy Chinese classics, stories of strategy and honor, poems about the moon and the impermanence of things. The goal is not to feel the beauty of the moon, it is to read about the beauty of the moon using the correct form. Feeling is optional. Form is mandatory. Then there is poetry. The haiku. 17 syllables to capture a moment. Your father gives you a theme. The sound of the cicada. You spend an hour in silence, sweat dripping down your back, trying to find the words. Your attempt is clumsy. Summer screams loudly. Through the wings of the cicada, silence will come. Your father reads it, says nothing, and puts the paper aside. His silence is a criticism more cutting than any shout. The hardest battle, however, is that of the spirit. It is the battle against yourself. It is the training of zazen, the seated meditation. You kneel on your heels, back straight, stare at a blank wall for an hour. Your mind wanders. Your legs go numb, then scream in pain. If you move, a monk overseeing the training hits you on the back with a flat bamboo stick, kaiosaku. The blow is meant to awaken your spirit. In practice, it just reminds you that even stillness in this world can be painful. One particularly harsh winter, your father orders you to stand outside in the snow, dressed only in your kimono thin, for 2 hours. A samurai does not feel the cold, he says. He endures it. You stand there, shivering, the cold seeping into your bones as you watch your older brother Kazuo, training with the spear, was in the courtyard. Kazuo is stronger, more focused. He never seems to feel pain or fatigue. He is the perfect son. You are his shadow. The rivalry between you is never spoken, but it is present in every look, in every training session. Etiquette is the invisible armor you wear at all times. How to walk, how to sit, how to serve tea to a guest, how to bow. The depth of the bow depends exactly on the status of the person in front of you. A mistake can bring shame to your family. A perceived insult can lead to a duel and death. You learn that social life is a minefield, and every word, every gesture is a step that can trigger a catastrophe. You are taught about the honor of dying, but what you really learn is the fear of living the wrong way. At 16, you participate in your coming-of-age ceremony, the genpuku. Your boyish hair is shaved off, and you are given your first pair of real swords, the long katana and the short wakizashi. They hang heavy on your belt. They are not training tools. They are souls of steel forged to take life. You are given a grown-up name and a suit of armor that belonged to your grandfather. It smells of old leather and ancient battles. You are now a samurai, at least in name. The peace that the Tokugawa clan is slowly imposing on Japan has not yet reached this remote province. War with the neighboring Takeda clan is a wound that never heals. Skirmishes on the border are constant. The stories that the older samurai tell in the hall at night are of ambushes, sieges, and the way a man screams when he is struck by an arrow. You long for it, and you fear it. You have spent your entire life training for war. It is your sole purpose. But the reality of what it means, the chaos, the pain, the death, is a ghost that haunts your nights. The news arrives on an autumn afternoon. A messenger, covered in dust, arrives at his lord's small castle. The Takeda clan has made a move, seizing a fort on the border. His lord is gathering his forces. That night, your father summons you and Kazuo. He is dressed in full armor. The lamplight shines on his helmet. The time has come, he says, his voice devoid of emotion. You will march with our lord at dawn. You will have your first battle. He looks at Kazuo with an approving nod. You will lead the men of our family. Then he turns to you. His eyes are hard. You will follow him and bring no shame to this name. There are no words of comfort. There is no father's embrace. Only the crushing weight of duty. You spend the night in silence, polishing your katana under the moonlight. The blade is cold, perfect, indifferent. You stare at your distorted reflection in the steel. The face of a boy trying to look like a man. All the training, all the poetry, all the meditation. It all comes down to this. Tomorrow, you will step out of the rock garden of your youth and into the field of mud and blood. You are about to find out if the soul your father forged within you is strong enough not to break. Dawn comes, not with the poetic beauty you are forced to write about, but with a cold grey light that seems to suck the heat from the world. The order to march is a hoarse shout in the courtyard, not a noble call to glory. Your first time donning full armor, the yoroi. Your grandfather's sword is a lesson in humiliation. You imagined it would make you feel powerful, invincible. The reality is that it is heavy, clumsy, and noisy. Every movement is accompanied by a creak of leather and a clank of metal plates. It doesn't turn you into a warrior. It turns you into a noisy walk-in closet. The march is torture. You, the low-ranking samurai and the ashigaru, foot soldiers, march on foot. The mud sucks their straw sandals. The weight of their armor, of their long spear, was, and from their swords, settles on their shoulders and hips, a promise of pain for the end of the day. The high-ranking samurai, including his father and his brother Kazuo, ride by, looking imposing and distant. They do not look back. The only thing that flows from the top to the bottom of the hierarchy is contempt. You make camp at dusk. The air is thick with smoke from hundreds of campfires, and the smell of undercooked rice and sweat. There is no comfort here. Camaraderie is a rough thing, forged in crude jokes and a shared fatalism. The veterans, men with faces like maps of ancient battles, sharpen their blades with eerie calm. They roll dice, drink sake from gourds, and tell stories of past sieges and the stupidity of their enemies. They do not talk about honor. They talk about tactics, about weaknesses, about how a lucky archer's arrow can bring down the greatest warrior. You and the other young recruits stand together, silent. You clean your weapons with obsessive attention, not because they are dirty, but because it is something to do with shaking hands. Fear is a physical thing, a cold knot in your stomach that watery miso soup cannot warm. Your father walks past you. He doesn't stop. He just says, "Don't hesitate." Hesitation is an invitation to death. Aim for the neck, the armpits, the thighs, where armor doesn't protect. This is not advice from a father to a son. It is advice from a craftsman to his tool. The night before your user, your first battle, is a sleepless one. You lie down, the ground cold beneath you, and listen to the sounds of the camp, the coughing of men, the neighing of horses, and in the distance the faint sound of a drum from the enemy camp, a drum that beats like the heart of your own fear. The battle begins with sound. War drums, taiko, beat in a rhythm that vibrates in your chest. Shells, hoarfrost sound, a long terrifying wail that seems to come from the throat of a demon. And then the screams, thousands of men shouting their war cries, a wave of sound designed to break the enemy's courage before they even break their lines. The order to advance is given. You move forward, part of a mass of men. Your spear is long and clumsy. The world becomes a chaos of colorful banners, smoke, and dust. The first volley of gunfire rings out. The arquebuses. The sound is a crack, high-pitched, and clouds of stinking white smoke fill the air. You see men in front of you fall without even having come close to the enemy. There is no grace, just a noise, and a man who was running alongside you is now on the ground with a hole in his chest. Then come the arrows, a whistle in the air, a black rain falling upon you. You raise your wooden shield instinctively. An arrow hits it with a thunk death. Another one whizzes past his ear. The concept of honor disappears. There's only the primal desire not to be the thing the next arrow will hit, and then you collide. The meeting of the two front lines is not a clean clash of steel on steel. It is an ugly, clumsy collision of bodies. It is a forest of spears. You are in the middle of it, pushing, trying to find an opening. The man in front of you is impaled. You step over his body to keep moving forward. The mud is red. The smell of blood and fear is suffocating. Your world shrinks. There are no more armies. There is only the man in front of you. One Ashigaru enemy, his face a mask of terror and rage, his spear coming towards him. All your training, all your 1,000 cuts, all your poetry, all your meditation, nothing has prepared you for this. Time stretches. You dodge on pure instinct, the tip of his spear ripping through the sleeve of your armor. He is off balance for a second. A second. Your father's voice echoes in your head. Do not hesitate. You don't think. You react. You step forward not with your katana, but with your spear, the common soldier's weapon. You thrust it forward. You feel a soft impact, a wet sound. The man in front of you looks at you, not with hatred, with surprise. He looks down at the tip of your spear sticking out of his belly. He opens his mouth, but only a gurgle comes out. And then he falls. You killed a man. There's no time to process, no time to feel disgust or triumph. Another enemy is upon you. You abandon the spear in your hand and draw your katana. The blade feels strangely light. You swing it, clumsy, panicked. The battle becomes a blur of shouts, of steel, of shoving and falling into the mud. The battle ends when the enemy line finally breaks. The men turn and run. The pursuit is relentless. The killing continues until the sound of drums signals the regrouping. The silence that follows is more shocking than the noise. You stand, panting in the middle of a field of bodies. Men moan, men cry, men stare into space. The smell is unbearable. The gruesome task begins. The high-ranking samurai walk the field inspecting. The retainers collect the heads of notable enemies. It is an accounting of the dead. The heads are trophies, proofs of valor to be presented to the daimyo. You watch your brother Kazuo, his face streaked with blood, but his eyes glowing with a feverish light of excitement. He presents the head of an enemy samurai to your father. Your father nods, a rare sign of approval. You look at your own hands. They're covered in mud and someone else's blood. You have no head to show for it. You just have a cold emptiness in your stomach, and the image of the surprised face of the man you killed burned into your mind. That night, back at camp, you can't eat. You tried to clean your katana, but the stain seems to have soaked into the steel. Your father comes over. He sees the state you're in, your pale face. He places a heavy hand on your shoulder. You survived your user, he says. His voice is the same as always, hard as stone. You have killed your first enemy. You have become a samurai today. You look at him and for the first time, you understand what this really means. It's not about poetry. It's not about honor. It's about being the man who's left standing at the end of the day, in the middle of the carnage. surviving the slaughterhouse and being ready to go back the next day. And the thought fills you with a dread deeper than any fear you felt on the battlefield. The euphoria of victory, if it ever existed, lasts less than a day. It dissipates with the first cold night, and the realization that war is not a series of battles, but a long, tiring march punctuated by them. Your Lord's army does not return home in a triumphant parade. It marches on to its next objective, the Takeda clan's castle, a stone and timber fortress nestled in the mountains. The plan is not a direct assault. It is a siege. To a young warrior who dreams of the gleam of steel, the word siege is one of the most demoralizing in the language. It does not mean glory. It means waiting. It means rot. You arrive and set up camp. A camp is too generous a word for the city of mud, straw, and despair that has sprung up around the enemy castle. Your new home is a makeshift hut with a bamboo frame and straw mat walls that do a mediocre job of keeping out the rain. You share this cramped, damp space with 4 other men and an innumerable number of lice, which quickly become your closest companions. The routine of campaign life sets in, and it's a symphony of monotony and misery. Your days aren't filled with sword training or meditation. They're filled with manual labor. You dig trenches, long winding scars in the earth, designed to inch closer to the castle walls. You spend days with a shovel in your hand, the mud sucking into your sandals, your back aching. Other days, you're tasked with building siege towers, clumsy and dangerous wooden structures that look ready to crumble in a strong wind. And then there are the vigils, hours on end, standing on a wooden palisade staring up at the silent castle walls. You watch enemy banners flutter in the wind. You try to catch a glimpse of a sentry moving. Most of the time, nothing happens. It's an exercise in patience and fighting sleep, as the night's dampness seeps through your armor and settles into your bones. Food is a constant obsession, especially the lack of it. A soldier's diet on campaign is designed to do 2 things: keep him alive, just barely, and make sure he never gets too comfortable. The basis of every meal is a bowl of okay, a watery rice porridge with the consistency of a sad soup. Sometimes it is accompanied by a piece of pickled radish or a salted plum, omeboshi, whose sour and salty flavor is so intense that it makes you forget about hunger for a few minutes. You are always hungry. You dream of the simple rice cake your mother used to make. Here, such a delicacy would be a feast worthy of a daimyo. The hierarchy of hunger is clear. You see the higher-ranking samurai, including your father and brother, getting larger portions, sometimes even with pieces of dried fish. They have their own tents, their own servants. They drink sake at night, their laughter echoing through the camp, while you drink water from a stream you suspect is the same one where the men wash their wounds upstream. Your brother, Kazuo, thrives in this environment. He is bold in small skirmishes and good at making himself known to his commanders. He is praised for his ferocity. He looks at you with a kind of pity and contempt. Your stillness, the horror he sees in your eyes from the first battle, he interprets as weakness. The gulf between you widens. You are no longer just brothers. You are samurai of different qualities, and in this world, ferocity is a much more valuable currency than introspection. Disease is a more dangerous enemy than the castle's arrows. Latrines are mere ditches, and the constant rain turns the camp into a swamp of waste. Dysentery spreads like wildfire. Strong men, warriors who have survived cavalry charges, are reduced to quivering skeletons, dying on their own straw mats. The fear of a stomachache becomes more real than the fear of an enemy's blade. Boredom is their most faithful companion. To combat it, men resort to vices. Dice games using marked stones are played everywhere. Men bet their rations an extra piece of cloth, anything to break the monotony. Arguments are frequent and bitter. You spend your free time quietly, tending to your weapons, polishing your katana, mending the leather bindings of your armor. These are tasks that require focus, that silence the ghosts in your mind. The veterans around you, men who have been through dozens of campaigns like this, watch you. One of them, an old man Ashigaru named Jiro, with a face like a wrinkled map, sits down next to you one day. "You think too much, boy," he says, his voice hoarse. "There's nothing to think about here. You eat what you're given, you sleep when you can, and you kill who you're told to kill. The rest is smoke." He teaches you the real lessons of war. How to spot water that won't kill you with diarrhea. How to use mud to camouflage your helmet. How to sleep through a mortar attack. The siege drags on for months. Spring turns to summer. Summer turns to autumn. The landscape around the castle, once green, is now a wasteland, brown and dead. Occasionally there is action. One night, your platoon is chosen for a night raid and attempt to burn down one of the castle gates. You move through the darkness, your heart's in your throat. The raid fails. You are met by a hail of arrows and stones. You retreat, carrying your wounded, leaving 2 men behind. War is 99% waiting and 1% absolute terror. Winter approaches. The air grows colder. The mood in camp grows dark. Rations dwindle. You grow thinner, your skin stretched tight over your bones. The boy who left the rock garden of your home is gone. In his place is a hardened survivor, a man who understands that honor is a story the masters tell, but survival is the soldier's only truth. You sit by a fire that produces more smoke than heat, staring at the castle walls, now dark against a winter sky. You no longer feel hatred for the enemy within. They must be hungry, cold, afraid too. You're just 2 sides of the same miserable coin, tossed around by bigger, richer men. The glory of battle, the thrill of it. User, all of it is gone, burned and reduced to nothing. What's left is just a taste of ash in your mouth, a taste of war. The end of the war does not come with the clang of steel or the cry of victory. It comes as a rumor, a whisper carried on the cold winter wind. A messenger, covered in mud and exhaustion, arrives at the camp. He does not bring orders for a new attack. He brings news that is, at first, incomprehensible. The great warlord, Tokugawa Ieyasu, has consolidated his power. The Battle of Sekigahara has been fought and won. The country is being unified under a new shogunate. The war that lasted more than a century, the war that was the air his family breathed for generations, is over. The news spreads through the camp not like wildfire, but like a cold mist. The initial reaction is not joy. It is stunned silence. The men look at each other, their faces dirty and tired, trying to process the information. Is it over? Just like that? Without another battle? Without a final charge? The siege of Takeda Castle, which had been their entire universe for months, suddenly becomes irrelevant, a forgotten afterword in a story that is over. His master's army does not break up in celebration. It breaks up in confusion. The orders come, return home. The long march back is a grim mirror of the journey out. The tension of battle has been replaced by an uncomfortable stillness. The men walk in silence, lost in their own thoughts. What does this mean? What will they do now? You, Kenji, feel hollow. You have spent your entire life training for one purpose: to fight and, if necessary, to die for your lord. War was your forge, your identity. Without it, who are you? A man who knows how to kill efficiently, how to endure hunger and cold, and how to write mediocre poetry about dragonflies. What use are these skills in a world at peace? Upon returning to his province, the new reality begins to set in. His lord, the daimyo, has not been defeated. On the contrary, for having chosen the winning side, he has been rewarded by the new shogun. His rule has been confirmed, his status solidified. But he is no longer a sovereign warlord. He is an administrator, a vassal in a rigid, centralized power structure that extends all the way to the new capital, Edo. His family returns to their small estate. The swords are cleaned one last time and placed on a wooden stand in the main hall. They look strange there, mortal art objects in a world that no longer has any use for them. His father, a man whose entire life has been defined by loyalty in times of war, seems lost. He spends his days in silent meditation or practicing cuts with his katana in the courtyard, but his movements lack the purpose they once had. They are the movements of a ghost, rehearsing a play that has already been phased out. His brother, Kazuo, deals with peace differently. He's angry. His ferocity, his ambition, his identity as a warrior are all now liabilities. At a banquet in the Lord's castle, he drinks too much sake and gets into an argument with another samurai over a trivial matter of honor. In the past, this might have been resolved with a duel. Now, it is resolved with a stern reprimand from a superior officer. Violence, once the official language of power, is now illegal, a disturbance of the new order. Kazuo is a caged wolf, snarling at the bars of peace. And you are adrift. The peace that is coming is not a relief, it is an emptiness. The physical scars of the campaign are healing, but the scars of the soul are deeper. You have nightmares, not of the battle itself, but of the boredom of the siege, of the sick faces of men dying of dysentery, of the silence after killing your first enemy. The world is being remade around you. The Tokugawa shogunate imposes a new set of rules. The social hierarchy, once fluid in times of war, is now rigidly codified. The samurai are at the top, but their role is changing. The age of the warrior is ending. The age of the bureaucrat is beginning. Your lord needs men to administer his domains, to collect taxes from farmers, to oversee irrigation projects, to keep meticulous records of rice stocks. The brush is becoming mightier than the sword. Your calligraphy, the skill you despised in your youth, is now more valuable than your skill with the spear. One day, his father calls him. He looks older, more tired. Our lord needs an assistant for the rice magistrate, he says. Kazuo has no patience for this. You will go. It's not a question, it's an order. Your new battlefield will not be a muddy plain, but a dusty room filled with scrolls. Your new enemy will not be a Takeda soldier, but the mathematics of calculating rice taxes. You look at your swords, the daisho that represents your soul. They are your identity, the symbol of your class. But you realize with a cold, bleak clarity that they have become a costume, a fantasy. You're an actor, hired to play the role of samurai in a world that no longer needs them. The peace that everyone supposedly wanted has arrived. and it feels like a prison. A silent, well-ordered prison from which there is no escape. You have trained your entire life to die with honor. Now, your challenge is much harder. You have to learn to live. Your new battlefield is a small, windowless room in the confines of your lord's castle. It smells not of blood or mud, but of dust, old paper, and slowly drying squid ink. Your new weapon is not a katana, but a calligraphy brush. Your new armor is not steel, but layers of etiquette and deference. You are a samurai, and your life now is bureaucracy. You have become a yoriki, an assistant to the rice magistrate. It's a title that sounds less imposing than it actually is. In practice, you're an accountant, a warehouse manager with the right to wear 2 swords. Your days, once dictated by the advance of armies and the threat of ambushes, are now ruled by a crushingly monotonous rhythm. The morning begins with a bow. You bow to your superior, Magistrate Inoue, an older man whose main combat skill is the ability to find the smallest error in a ledger. You spend hours sitting in the seiza on your knees until your legs go numb and then scream in silent protest. Your task is to check the tax records of the villages under your lord's rule. You use an abacus, the soroban, their wooden beads clicking softly. It's a very different sound from the clanking of armor. You calculate the tree, the measure of rice that defines the wealth and power of everyone in this new world. How many tree? How much did Tanaka's village produce? How much tax is owed? Was the harvest good or bad? The math is simple, but the implications are heavy. A miscalculation on his part could mean a peasant family starving or their lord unhappy. Both options are dangerous. By afternoon, the reality of their work is revealed in the flesh. A delegation of village elders arrives. They bow so low that their foreheads touch the tatami floor. They smell of earth and despair. They speak with practiced humility, explaining that the summer rains have flooded part of their fields. They beg for a reduction in this year's rice taxes. You listen to them in silence. You, a warrior who once felt the fear of death, are now the face of an impersonal and unforgiving system. You feel sympathy for them. You remember the famine in the camp. But your orders are clear. Your lord's rice stipend to the shogunate is fixed. The quota must be met. You dismiss them with formal, empty words, promising to take the petition to the magistrate. You both know it means nothing. As you watch them leave, their backs hunched in defeat, you leave a bitter taste in your mouth. You have become the kind of man your younger self would have despised. Then you spend the rest of the afternoon writing a report on the incident. It's an exercise in penmanship and euphemism. You can't write, "The peasants are starving." You write, "The agricultural productivity in Tanaka village has deviated negatively due to unforeseen weather conditions. But the loyalty of the people remains unshakable. You've spent years learning how to die. No one has taught you how to survive a meeting about the allocation of pickled radishes. Life within the castle walls is its own form of war. A war waged with whispers, glances, and the complex grammar of hierarchy. Every corridor is a minefield of etiquette. You have to know exactly who to bow to, how deeply, and for how long. An encounter with a samurai of higher status demands a show of deference that borders on humiliation. Your brother, Kazuo, navigates this world with a skill that irritates you. He understands the game. He flatters his superiors. He spreads rumors about his rivals. He has secured a position as one of the daimyo's personal guards, a job with more prestige and less paperwork. He regards you with a mixture of pity and superiority. To him, you are the brother who drowned in a sea of ink. In the evening, you return to your small home in the castle town. Peace has brought a new battle, poverty. Your stipend as a low-ranking samurai is fixed, paid in rice, but the world around you is changing. The merchant class, once considered inferior, is thriving in this new age of commerce. You see merchants wearing silk kimonos, frequenting tea houses, while you wear the same worn-out clothes you've worn for years. You have the status of a ruler, but the finances of a peasant. It's a constant, silent humiliation. Your wife, a woman from an equally modest samurai family, performs daily miracles to make the rice last until the end of the month. It is at night, in the stillness of your home, that the weight of your true self becomes unbearable. You slide open the papered door to your little garden. There, under the moonlight, you take your swords from the rack, daisho, the long katana and the short one, wakizashi. They are your soul. You unsheath them. The steel gleams cold and perfect. The blade is a whisper of death in a world that demands silence. You practice your sei, the shapes you learned as a boy. The movements are in your muscle memory. The cut, the block, the spin. For a brief moment as steel slices through the air, you're not a bureaucrat. You're a warrior. You're what you were trained to be. The feeling is pure, powerful, and deeply sad. But the practice ends. You clean and oil the blades with reverent care and place them back in their holder. They are useless. They are relics. They are a heavy reminder, worn on your hip every day, of a purpose that has been robbed from you by peace. Their weight is no longer the weight of a weapon, but the weight of a life unlived. You sit on the porch, looking out over the rock garden you have created for yourself. You have peace. You have security. You have a family. You have survived the war. So why, you wonder, does this feel so much like defeat? Why does the golden cage of peace feel more cramped than any muddy trench? The warrior was not killed in battle. He was tamed and put behind a desk. And the rice prison, you realize, has walls far higher than any castle you have ever besieged. Years in your lord's castle have transformed you into something you barely recognize. Your skin, once tanned by the sun of the campaign, has turned pale from life indoors. Your fingers, once calloused from spear and sword hilts, are now stained with ink. You have become a master of the abacus, an expert on forms, and a connoisseur of the subtleties of humble speech. You are the image of a new age samurai, obedient, efficient, and harmless. But peace has its own poisons. The absence of war does not eliminate ambition, envy, or contempt. On the contrary, it refines them. Battles are now fought in corridors with whispers, alliances, and calculated humiliations. And it is one afternoon, during a tea ceremony for a visiting official, that their carefully constructed peace shatters. The man who attacks you doesn't use a sword. He uses words. His name is Ochi, a young, arrogant samurai from a family with slightly more wealth and far more influence than yours. He is known for his sharp tongue and his ability to navigate court politics. He sees your quietness, your refusal to participate in power games as weakness. He's telling a story about a recent hunt, and in the middle of it, he turns to you and says, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes for all to hear. Of course, Kenji-san wouldn't know anything about the thrill of the hunt. His days are spent hunting accounting errors. He smells more like paint than steel. The room goes silent, a heavy, expectant silence. This is not a violent insult. It is worse. It is a precise, surgical insult that attacks your identity, your masculinity, and your status as a samurai. He is calling you a clerk, a bookworm. He's erasing your history as a warrior. You don't react. Years of discipline prevent you. You simply look up from your teacup and stare at Ochi. Your gaze is cold and level. There is no anger in it. There is only a terrible calm. And in that silence and that gaze, a challenge is made and accepted. Everyone in the room understands it. The walk home is a blur. His mind, normally a fortress of enforced calm, is a storm. The anger is there, yes, a white-hot fire. But beneath it, there is something else. Fear. A cold, sickening fear. Duels Keto are strictly prohibited by the shogunate. The law of fighting Ryoshibai is clear. In a fight, both parties are guilty and both are punished, usually with death or exile, and the dissolution of their clan. You are cornered. If you refuse the implied challenge, you will live the rest of your life as a coward. Your reputation, the only currency you have left, will be destroyed. The other samurai will ignore you. Children will laugh at you. It will be a slow social death. If you accept and fight, you risk physical death or complete ruin for your family. Your wife and children will be left destitute. The code of the bushido. The stories of honor you were taught now seem like a cruel joke. They speak of dying for your lord, for a noble cause. They do not speak of risking everything because of an insult about your smell. That night, you don't tell your wife anything. How could you? You watch her mending a garment for your son. The lamplight softens the lines of worry on her face. The normality of the scene is torture. You go to the small garden in the back. You draw your katana. The moonlight dances on the blade. You practice your sei, but his movements are stiff. His hands, so familiar with the brush, feel strange on the hilt of the sword. The warrior inside him is rusty. The duel is scheduled for dawn in a pine grove outside the city, through a discreet message exchanged through intermediaries. When you arrive, accompanied by your second, an old friend from the Takeda campaign, Ochi is already there. He seems confident, almost bored. The air is cold and still. The rituals are performed in silence. You take off your haori, the outer coats. You bow to each other, a bizarre formality before an assassination attempt. You draw your swords. The sound of steel sliding out of the scabbard is the loudest sound in the world. You stare at each other. Time stands still. Your mind, once a storm, is now empty. There's only the man in front of you, his blade, his breath. All the years of meditation, of training to empty your mind, were for this moment. Ochi, arrogant, strikes first. A downward slash, fast and powerful. You see him start, not with your eyes, but with your instinct, forged in real battles. His movement is strong, but slightly exaggerated. He's showing off. You don't block. You move. A single step to the side, your body twisting. His blade slices through the air where you were a microsecond before. For an instant, he's off balance, his body committed to the blow. It's the opening your father taught you to look for. You don't hesitate. Your cut is horizontal, fast without thought. It's not pretty, it's functional. You feel the impact as your blade meets the unprotected side of his torso. A wet sound and a snap of bone. Ochi stops. His expression of arrogant confidence melts into a mask of shock and incomprehension. He looks down at the blood blooming on his kimono. He looks up at you, his eyes filled with a silent question. Then his knees give way. He falls to the dew-covered grass with a soft thud. The silence that follows is deeper than any silence you've ever known. You stand, dripping with sweat, adrenaline turning to nausea. Your second rushes to you, cleans his blade and pushes you away. Go. Now. You run. Back to your life as a bureaucrat. But now you're different. You're a killer. You sit in your silent room as the sun rises. You've defended your honor. You've silenced the insult. But you feel no triumph. You feel dirty. Empty. You think of the books of Bushido. They speak of purity, of loyalty, of a death as beautiful as a falling cherry blossom. You've just killed a man out of vanity and anger in a damp wood at dawn. There was no poetry, just blood and an ugly end. You look down at your hands. They are clean, but you can feel the weight of the sword, the feel of the blade cutting. You have won the duel, but in doing so you have broken your shogun's law, betrayed the peace you fought for, and proven to yourself that beneath the bureaucrat, the animal trained to kill still lives. Honor has been satisfied, and yet you have never felt so dishonored. The echo of your duel in the pine grove does not fade. It turns into whispers in the castle corridors. Ochi is dead. You are alive. People look at you differently, with a new layer of fear, yes, but also with contempt. You are a dangerous animal, a throwback to a wilder era that the new shogunate is desperately trying to bury. You feel the isolation closing in around you like a fog. But the final blow comes not from an avenger's blade or a judge's sentence. It comes from a far more powerful and distant source, a paintbrush in the capital, Edo. The news comes like a bolt from the blue. Their lord, the daimyo, through some ill-judged alliance in the past or through failure to send a sufficiently expensive gift to the right official, has fallen from grace. An edict from the shogun arrives, sealed and final. The clan is dissolved. Their lord's lands are confiscated and redistributed. The social order of your world collapses overnight. The castle, which was the center of your universe, becomes a place of silent panic. The high-ranking samurai, who yesterday strutted around with arrogance, now have pale, frightened faces. For them, it means a loss of power and wealth. For you, a low-ranking samurai, it means the end of everything. Your rice stipend, your house in the samurai quarter, your very status, everything evaporates. You are no longer a samurai in the service of the Asano clan. You are now a ronin, a wave man, a samurai without a master. It is one of the most shameful words in your language. It is a social death sentence. The fall is swift and brutal. You have 1 week to vacate your homes. You, your wife, and your children are forced to leave the samurai quarter, a place of clean walls and orderly gates. You move into a rented room in an overcrowded tenement in the artisans' and merchants' part of town. Your new home is a single dark room that smells of sewage and your neighbor's boiled cabbage. The contrast with your old house with its small rock garden is a daily torture. Poverty, once a constant worry, is now a real famine. Your only source of income has disappeared. You begin to sell off your possessions. First your grandfather's armor piece by piece, his helmet, then his breastplates. Each sale is a stab to your pride. You sell the poetry scrolls you copied in your youth. A merchant buys them to decorate his shop without understanding their meaning. The day comes when you face the most painful decision. You have no food. Your wife silently looks at you. Daisho, the pair of swords on your belt. You know what you have to do. Selling the katana, the soul of the samurai, is unthinkable. But the wakizashi, the short blade, is like selling one of your own limbs. You take it to a pawnbroker, a man who looks at you with a mixture of pity and greed. He gives you a few coins, a paltry sum for the steel and the history of the blade. When you leave the shop, with the empty scabbard at your side, you feel naked, mutilated. Now, you are a man with a single sword and no purpose, walking the streets of a city you once helped to rule. You need work, but what use is a samurai in times of peace? Your skills are to kill and to die. No one pays for that, not openly. You try to become one yojimbo, a bodyguard. Your first client is a wealthy sake merchant who fears that his competitors will attack him. Your job is to stand silently behind him while he negotiates and feasts. The merchant, a man you would have despised in your previous life, treats you like an expensive guard dog. He pays you well, but every coin you accept burns in his hand. It is the price of your dignity. You try to open a small dojo to teach swordsmanship, but who wants to learn? The other ronin have no money. Your only students are the spoiled sons of merchants. They don't want to learn the discipline, the way of the sword. They want the romance of using a katana. They are clumsy, disrespectful, and give up after a few weeks of basic training. You close the dojo, failure tasting more bitter than any defeat in battle. You meet other ronin in the cheaper taverns. They are a clan of broken men, a brotherhood of bitterness. They drink and gamble and talk about the old days of war. Some have found new work. They've become hired guns for debt collectors or bouncers for gambling dens. Others, the most desperate, have become bandits, robbing travelers on the highways. One of them, a man you met during the siege of Takeda Castle, approaches you one night. He's drunk, but his eyes are cold and calculating. Honor doesn't fill your belly, Kenji, he says, his voice low. Nor does it feed your children. There's work to be done. A merchant's warehouse. Easy. We need another blade. The offer hangs in the air. It is the ultimate temptation, the path to darkness. Everything you have been taught, every poem you have copied, every hour of meditation, it all comes down to this moment. You look down at your own calloused hands, hands that have already taken a life in battle. Could they do it again? For money? For a sack of rice? You think of your father. You think of the face of the man you killed in the duel. You think of your son sleeping in the cramped room. What legacy would you leave him? That of a samurai who kept his honor in poverty, or that of a thief who survived? No, you say. The word is silent, but firm. The other, Ronin, shrugs. Your choice. Starve your honor, then. He walks away and disappears into the night. You come home. Your wife is awake, waiting for you. She doesn't ask where you've been. She knows by the look on your face that you've been fighting some kind of battle. You sit in the silence of your miserable room. You're no longer a samurai in the eyes of the world. You have no lord, no land, no status. You're just a man trying to feed his family. But that night, by refusing the easy, dark path, you made the first decision that was truly yours in a long time. You've lost everything that defined a samurai. And yet, for For the first time since peace began, you feel like one. The decades have passed like the seasons, each leaving a new layer of frost on your hair and a new wrinkle on your face. The Japan you once knew, a cauldron of war and ambition, is no more. The peace of the Tokugawa shogunate is now a solid rock, an unquestionable order that governs all. The nation is quiet, and you, a man forged in the storm, have learned to live in silence. You didn't starve to death like a ronin. You did not fall from grace as a bandit. You found a new path, the most unlikely of all. You became a shisho, a teacher. Not in a dojo, famous, but in a small school that you have opened in the back of your modest house, on the outskirts of the city. Your students are not the sons of samurai, but the sons of wealthy merchants, men whom in your youth you would have despised, but who now rule the world with their scales and their account books. Irony is your constant companion. You teach these soft-handed boys the art of calligraphy, the discipline of holding the brush and forming the kanji with a single fluid movement. You teach them the poetry of the classics, speaking of impermanence and the beauty of nature. And yes, you teach them the way of the sword. They practice with goats in their small courtyard, clumsy and excited. They dream of the romance of being a samurai, a fantasy fueled by the plays and stories that have become popular in this age of peace. They ask him for stories of his war days. Sensei, is it true that you fought in the campaign against the Takeda? Asks a young man with bright eyes. And this is where you become an artist of a different kind. You become a myth maker. You don't tell them the truth, not the whole truth. You don't describe the smell of fear in the camp, the hunger that gnaws at the stomach, or the wet sound of a spear piercing a man. You don't talk about the crushing boredom of the siege or the nausea after taking your first life. Instead, you give them the story they want, the story the times now demand. You tell of camaraderie, of brilliant tactics, of the bravery of your comrades. You transform the chaotic confusion of battle into a dance of steel and strategy. The duel with Ochi, born of a petty insult, becomes in your account a necessary defense of your clan's honor, an inevitable clash between two great swordsmen. You edit your life, sanding away the ugly edges and polishing the dull parts until they shine with a glory that never existed. You do this not just to impress them, but perhaps to convince yourself. If the story is told beautifully enough, perhaps the ugliness of reality can be forgotten. Your son, the one you raised during your years of poverty, has become a successful man, not a warrior, but the manager of a rice merchant, a man of numbers and contracts. He visits you, brings you gifts, and cares for you in your old age. He is a good man, a product of the peace you, in theory, fought for. One day, he finds him polishing his old katana. The blade is still perfect, a line of light in the dark room. "Father," he asks softly, "was it worth it? All that life, the war, the loss of our status, the fighting as a ronin, was it worth it?" You stop polishing and look at the blade, seeing your own wrinkled face reflected in the steel. What can you say? That the code that governed your life was a beautiful lie? That honor was often an excuse for violence? That most of your existence as a samurai was spent not with a sword but with a brush and an abacus? The way of the warrior, as it's written in the books, you say finally, your voice hoarse with age, is meant to be read, not lived. Real life is messier. You do what you have to do to protect your family. You endure what you have to endure to keep your name clear. The rest is just history. It's the most honest answer you can muster. Your last spring arrives. You're too weak to teach. You spend your days sitting on the porch, looking out at your small garden. In it, there is a single cherry tree which you planted when you moved into this house, and now it is in full bloom. You sakura, cherry blossoms. Bushido poets and philosophers say that a samurai's life should be like them, bright, beautiful, and tragically short, ready to fall at the height of its glory, without regret. You look at the flowers and smile a toothless smile. What fools. Your life was nothing like that. It was not short. It was long, stubborn, often ugly. It was not bright. It was mostly grey and dull. And you didn't fall. You clung to life with your teeth and nails. You endured. You survived war. You survived peace. You survived poverty and dishonor. You were not a cherry blossom. You were an old, gnarled root, clinging to the rock. A gentle breeze blows through the garden. A shower of pink petals falls and dances in the air. One of them lands softly on your open, wrinkled hand. It is so light, so perfect, so ephemeral. You look at the small flower in your palm. You have found no glory in your life. You have not found the poetic death that the legends speak of. But in this moment, under the shade of your cherry tree, with the warm sun on your face and the silence of peace all around you, you find something much rarer. You find enough. And in a world of contradictions, in a life of blades and bureaucracy, this is the only enlightenment an old samurai could ask for.